This Social Security measure gives at least some protection
for anybody to hand this out. We're asking for a chance to have the people who will receive the benefit to earn their way. The same principle established under the Social Security system in the 30s.
It is no longer acceptable to discuss women's rights as separate from human rights.
I know we can come together to face down the challenges of our own time.
Hello, welcome to The Democrats, the show that introduces you to the Democratic candidates running in Nashua. I'm Cindy Rosenwald, and this is my co-host, David Campbell.
Hi.
Today we're with Marty Jack, who's a candidate for state rep in Ward 9. Welcome, Marty.
Hi, how are you?
We're great.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have an engineering background. I was fortunate enough to graduate from MIT. I was fortunate enough to get a job with one of the larger computer manufacturers who used to have many offices in this part of the state. I was located to New Hampshire in 1978, and I've been a New Hampshire resident since then. I was in software engineering, and recently I've gained an interest in politics.
Great. So what inspired you to decide to throw in your hat in the ring and run as a candidate for state representative?
Well, I've lived here a long time, and I've never seen anything quite as extreme as the policies that were put in place during the last legislature. There was a lot of emphasis on social issues, there was de-emphasis on economic issues, and there were a lot of funding cutbacks to some very important programs. For example, the university system took a 50% hit. This falls onto tuition, it falls onto student loans, and it makes students leave the state to get their education. We had cuts to the CHINS program, which is Child in Need of Services. That I've spoken to voters in my ward that were personally affected by that. It's basically that the program is totally wiped out. So now the only way that these kids can get services is if they happen to be arrested. And that was actually the case.
Which is more expensive for society.
Which is more expensive. We've also had cuts to the hospital system. I spoke to one voter who was personally affected by that. Probably you know the ambulance company totally went out of business as a result of that. And then finally, we are not fixing roads and bridges at anywhere near the rate that we need to do to keep them working. The example I usually use is if you don't change the oil in your car, pretty soon you're buying a new engine. And if we don't pave the roads on the schedule that we need to pave them, pretty soon we're reconstructing the roadbed because water has gotten into it. And there was another example in Portsmouth where a bridge had to be taken out of service on short notice, and it really inconvenienced a lot of people. So my thinking is I'm going to offer my voters a choice as to whether they want to continue these policies or whether they want to bring things back to sort of the way they were in the many years that I lived here before then.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the CHINS program because it's a great example of the Republicans saying we're going to cut taxes, we're going to cut the budget, and yet it just downshifts costs to local communities and therefore the property taxpayers. Because as you point out, that program used to take youth before they got into very expensive trouble and work with them so that they wouldn't be arrested, they wouldn't require so much higher education costs, they wouldn't be tying up our local court systems. Now, without those services, there are extra costs that are tied to the local communities, and we property taxes have to make that up.
Marty, you've told us you went door to door. You've gone door to door extensively. You visited every house in your district pretty much. Share with us the kind of things you're hearing from the voters, from the people in your district.
Well, some people are of the let's cut spending to the bone at all costs. Many people bring up the fact that we need more jobs, which is true. The way to improve the economy is to create more jobs, not to cut spending. And Cindy, one thing about downshifting is that local aid to cities has also been cut, which is going to affect, and schools cost the same to run, no matter who's paying.
That's right.
So that's going to downshift money that used to be come from state aid onto the local property tax bill.
That's true. I mean, we were talking with another guest yesterday about the $112 million cut in direct cash assistance to cities and towns. And as you're right, Nashua was supposed to get another $26 million in the budget for education. We're not getting it. So if we're going to incur those costs, we have to make it up through our property taxes.
And also, let's not forget the $20 million shortfall on the tobacco tax that went right back into the pockets of the tobacco companies.
Right.
Exactly. So from all that door-to-door, talking to people, what's your sense of what people want to see? Well,
They want to see change. Many people are disillusioned by what they've seen going on in Concord the last 2 years, and I think we have a real opportunity to get things back onto a more moderate, balanced, common sense path.
Yep.
So you're running on a platform of common sense.
Moderate, common sense state government.
That should appeal to the voters in Ward 9.
Well, that's it. I don't think voters are interested in extremism, really, from
Right.
either side of the political spectrum. And I think the election results of the last few years are proof of that. They want moderation, they want common sense, and you certainly seem to have hit a good chord there.
You're absolutely right, Dave.
I am. You're man after my own heart, because I've been one of the leading advocates of trying to fix our bridges and roads in the state. And what you've said is right on the head. I mean, if we don't do something now, it only gets more expensive down the road. And the only ones going to fix the bridges and roads out of the state, and it takes money to do it, unfortunately, and to keep kicking the can down the road, the can gets bigger and bigger.
But as you fix those roads, you're also creating good jobs.
Right, right. Construction jobs are some of the best paying jobs that we have.
And if we have a good transportation system, we're more likely to have businesses relocate here as well.
That's right. That's right.
You mentioned the cut to the university system. The community colleges were also cut back, I think 16 or 18%.
33%.
Depends on, I guess, who you look at.
Right.
That's the biennium overall, I think. But what's your feelings on that, and how does that work with what you're saying about jobs?
One of the things, of course, that employers look for is a state that values education, that is preparing a trained workforce so that the companies, when they locate to a state, can find workers to hire who bring something to the table. And certainly vocational education, community college education is an important way that some of the less intellectual jobs are going to have people trained for them.
Right. Anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
Well, I would ask my voters for their vote, and I'll see you at the poll on November 6th.
Excellent.
Thanks very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Marty. This is another edition of The Democrats. I'm David Campbell with my co-host Cindy Rosenwald. We've been chatting today with the candidate for state representative in Ward 9, Marty Jack, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.